Actually, the benefits come from the nature of the body. When it is given a chance, it can heal itself. The nature of the mind and the body being so intimately connected that when the mind settles down, the body settles down.
From Weill Cornell Medicine in New York City, this is Your Brain with Dr. Phil Stieg. Internationally renowned scientist and researcher, Dr. Stieg is Neurosurgeon-in-Chief of New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell Medical Center. This week, Dr. Stieg and his guest explore Transcendental Meditation.
Hello, I'd like to welcome Dr. Tony Nader, head of the Transcendental Meditation organization globally and successor to the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. How can we explain the brain-body interaction? What can we do to enter our inner state of consciousness and achieve the state of deep rest and stress release? Transcendental Meditation, or TM, is the answer. And beyond the individual, there is a collective consciousness. Let's learn from Dr. Nader how we might find inner peace and, more importantly, a reduction in societal stress. Tony, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a joy. You have a wonderful program, and it's a great pleasure to be with you.
In reading through your new book, One Unbounded Ocean of Consciousness, I was struck by your background. When you were 17, civil war broke out in Lebanon. So how does a 17-year-old kid living in the midst of a civil war even find out about the Maharishi? Was it happenstance, or were you searching it out?
I was searching for techniques, for ways to develop the full potential. So I, sought of yoga, of meditation, of exercise. And I happened to hear somebody saying there is such a simple, easy technique that comes from many thousands of years ago. And you can learn it in 3-4 days. It takes a couple of hours. It helps you in your studies, in your concentration. So I thought, why? How to do it? And there was near the American University of Beirut a center. It happened to be on what they called Bliss Street. So the address was on Bliss Street, and it was under the light tower, because there was a light tower for ships. Already the name sounded great, Light Tower and Bliss Street, so let's try it.
This couldn't have been by chance. That had to be by design.
Well, yeah, it depends how we look at it, but it was interesting, yes, of course.
And is that how you eventually met the Maharishi, or was that later on in life?
Well, I met first listening to him talk on a video conference that he was doing, and then learned from the local teacher and got interested in it. It helped me a lot in my studies and to face the war situation and the conflicts in the nation, which was really terrible, kind of a really severe war conditions. It helped me to stay focused and stable and be able to study and face the dangers. And so I wanted to know more. Then I traveled to Switzerland, where he had a conference on health, and a friend who knew me introduced me to him, and the story started there. I still went back and finished my internship, then did psychiatry. I was accepted at MIT, did my PhD. I was at Harvard, the clinical and research fellow in neurology. And then he called me to India, where he was. I thought it was for a sabbatical, and it became a lifetime story.
And here you are now, leader of the organization globally. Fantastic. Tony, can you tell us how you prepared for Transcendental Meditation?
It's a very simple procedure. You first learn about it, so you know its benefits, and that you can learn through the internet or a lecture that takes an hour. And then you meet with a teacher. They give you a preparatory lecture, and that then takes you to the instruction day. Instruction day is very personal. It's personal with a teacher who gives you your technique that you start practicing right away on your own. You will need 3 more days of checking that you come 1 hour a day, usually in a sequence, and then you're on your own, completely do-it-yourself technique.
Is there a quick or an easy way, or is it one of these things where you start very basically and then over time you will grow into it?
It's a very, very simple technique. Even children practice it from the age of 5 or 6. It's simply to sit in the chair, close the eyes, take a few seconds, and then you are taught a mental technique that allows the mind to follow its own desire or nature to search for more. The basic principle is the nature of the mind is always searching for more. We want more happiness, more joy, more charm. We want less obstacles, less stress, less disease. But we always search for more in the outside directions through our senses. This technique, based on the very ancient knowledge, takes the inward direction. All we say is just let the mind settle and go deeper within itself. We use a mantra, a sound which has no meaning, and then the mind keeps diving deep. So why does it dive inside? We are always projecting outside for pleasures and things, but actually within ourselves is the most profound peace and quiet, settled, restful state that the mind naturally starts seeking when we give it that direction. So within 3-4 days, one learns the technique and then one does it by themselves. And that's why people enjoy it, because they say, okay, I've had a long day, a hard day, and now I don't want to have to do something more. I want something not to do. And so actually Transcendental Meditation is not doing rather than doing. Is do less and accomplish more.
So why TM and not mindfulness?
It's a different approach. Mindfulness is wonderful in different ways. It creates the sense of having the mind available for different aspects, but it's still guiding the mind towards attention on one thing or the other. For example, breathing or another aspect of thought. Even though it's kind of an open monitoring, which means you're sitting there, you're not trying to manipulate, you let it happen, but you guide your attention here and there. In this case, there is no really guidance. That's why the name is Transcendental. Transcendental means actually to go beyond breathing, beyond thinking, beyond even emotion, beyond worries, and just keep coming back to the self in a sense. The technique just lets you go there because the mind seeks it naturally. So that is the difference.
So is the goal then of TM that state of transcendence and also the sense of inner awareness?
Exactly. If we say the mind is like an ocean which is active on its surface and more quiet in its depth, so you have the wave on the surface and you go deeper and deeper. To have an awareness without activity is something we usually don't experience. We imagine it, but even philosophers and thinkers throughout time, they said, every time I look inside, I find myself being aware of something. I'm never aware of nothing. And what happens in transcendence is actually that ability to have awareness of nothingness. Mentally, the person experiences rest. The electroencephalography shows it's a new kind of waves. It's not the sleep waves or the dream waves, but a special wave level, which is different. And so you have this combination of alertness with quietness. So wakeful alertness, we call it.
How much of that state and my self-consciousness is affected by who I am on a daily basis? So I'm a physician, somebody else is a Navy SEAL, somebody else is a high-stakes hedge fund person, high-strung. Where do they end up when they just start going into their mind? Is it more of that, or is there a different state?
Actually, this is a fabulous question, which really gets to the heart of the thinking and the heart of the book, One Unbounded Ocean of Consciousness also. It's because no matter what one is, where one is coming from, as long as one has a human physiology, transcendence leads to the same place. It means whether one is an astrophysicist or a driver or a painter or a philosopher or a surgeon, and one looks inside and dives deep, one finds that same stillness and silence where one is awake. That's why it's transcendence. We actually transcend the specifics and go to the place where everything merges. And so this is truly know thyself. Ultimate wisdom of knowing thyself is not just knowing one's qualities and shortcomings in order to be able to function in life. The true meaning of know thyself is to know that you are that unbounded ocean of being, of consciousness. That's why the book has that title.
But you make it sound very positive. Say, are there any people that do TM and they end up in a dark spot?
We haven't seen that. If they do it, they sometimes encounter stress, and we tell them how to deal with stress. But if they continue to do it, they continue to open up their true internal value, the true self of everything. And that is this pure consciousness, what we call pure consciousness.
So then consciousness by nature is good, not bad.
Well, yeah, and in this case, consciousness is the ultimate essence of everything. We are redefining reality and the origin of reality. And we're saying it's that consciousness. It's from myself that everything comes, which is also yourself, so there is no sense of small ego here. We transcend the small ego to the big ego.
Where does badness come from? And when I'm referring to badness, I'm referring to evil behavior versus the goodness that you suggested is what consciousness is.
Badness can be due to ignorance. The person is trying to be good, but they don't know, and they make mistakes. So ignorance leads to decisions that are not right. They might have the right intentions, but they don't know, and therefore their awareness is narrow. Maybe they are stressed, and that's another aspect. So when they are stressed, they don't see a big way. They are seeing things through a filter of their prejudice, a filter of their fear, a filter of their anxieties. And so even though they have the best intentions, they can make terrible mistakes. So that's one kind. Now there is the kind where you can have intentional evil. So does this exist? Yeah, of course, we know there are psychopaths that have no emotions, no feelings, no empathy, no compassion maybe even, and therefore they just think of their own little self. So evil can come from all of these aspects, and this is because we have freedom of choice. So even though we come from that unified consciousness, the paradigm that I present is a paradigm in which there is freedom of choice. Even the psychopath is protecting their own personal benefits, so they have that positive side, but they don't see that their own self is also part of a society, part of a holistic value, and that actually over a long period of time, it is better to be what we call good rather than bad or evil.
So to again go full circle, based on my earlier question, does an individual that's evil or bad, eventually when they're finding their consciousness, do they get to that level where their consciousness is fulfilled by who they are rather than what their consciousness is, so that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that the evil person says, yeah, I'm doing the right thing?
Who we are has two values aspects. There is the small ego, the individual self, which is the autobiographical self, which is the self that we identify with name, nationality, profession, etc. And there is the ultimate self, which is what we call the unified self, which is the collective self ultimately. But the ultimate self is different than the individual ego and the social ego, which is the outcome of the individual egos of all the individuals in society. So take a criminal, for example. We've done research on criminals and prisoners. One case was very striking of a real criminal who has done big crimes and who learned Transcendental Meditation. And after a few days, he by himself came out saying, I never would have imagined that inside me there could be such silence or such peace and such quiet. I always imagined myself as a killer, a bad person. And I was always acting and thinking based on who I knew I was. And so I was acting according to what I thought was my nature. And that's what we see actually, that if they continue the process, they will transcend that self and experience the true ultimate self. And they would just then modify their reality. They can even modify their connections. They can reprune their brain system. They can open up plasticity in the brain, that more coherence happens in the brain.
Do you need a coach to do that? How does one do that without any coaching?
It's by direct experience. This is the beauty of it. Coaching helps, but ultimately, this person, for example, I just mentioned, simply discovered that their mind can be more settled, that's all. There can be more silence within.
But he wanted that, right? He wanted to get away from that crime-ridden mind that he had. There must have to be an inner desire to find peace, correct?
An inner desire to be real, to be exploring oneself. But in the Transcendental Meditation program, we don't guide them to have a specific experience. Actually, we keep telling those who practice, no expectation and no anticipation of any results. That's part of the technique so that they are natural. So this person, for example, never knew what to expect. It's not like we said, you're going to now find yourself. Mainly it's you're going to reduce your stress, you will feel better, you will become more balanced. But the experience itself is very personal. So it's not like he can sit and think about being a better person and find the better person, because then he would be floating on the surface of the ocean and will be just tossed around by the waves. He always, been like that.
We all know that there are benefits, physiologic benefits related to TM. And can you go through those for our listeners?
Actually, the benefits come from the nature of the body, that when it is given a chance, it can heal itself. And the nature of the mind and the body being so intimately connected that when the mind settles down, the body settles down. And the nervous system and the physiology start working in a more balanced way. So there is a reduction in oxygen consumption, reduction in cortisol levels, stress hormones are reduced. And then gradually, all the other factors start coming in, where blood pressure is reduced. This has been published. Even the American Heart Association has prescribed TM as a technique. It's a very powerful technique for PTSD. It's used in the Veterans Administration. It improves the ability to get over smoking and drugs and rehabilitation. It helps in insulin resistance, asthma patients. And, there has been studies on infectious disease and immune system. And that carries on to also behavior, mental potential, grades of school.
Well, that's what I was most interested in, is to find out that it can facilitate creativity, academic performance, and concept learning, which is, as we age, those are good things to retain. I have a bias. I think the brain is where we sense everything, so we better keep it functioning as long as possible. I wanted to change tracks a little bit. You talk about that TM can help enhance leadership. That's important for a lot of people. How does that do it?
Leadership is the ability to see more variables in a situation and guide towards the best choice that is possible for the individual and the group. And what we're saying is that the broader the awareness, the greater the consciousness, the more ability to see and manage and experience variables for individual choices and for the choices of society. So a true leader is somebody who can see differences, accept them, see variables, and look forward towards future decisions that are long-term benefit for society and for the people they are leading. We have done actually studies on collective consciousness influenced by large groups of people coming together to practice this technique, and studied the changes in society in terms of conflict, accidents of the roads, crime, etc. There is something very profound that happens in consciousness, and there is collective consciousness which can influence the behavior of the group, that can be modified by large groups practicing this technique of transcending and enlivening that field of consciousness, not individually only, but collectively.
The problem I have is with the negative things that go on in the world. What about Hitler? What about Jim Jones down in Guyana, where people get compelled to do something stupid or evil? What drives consciousness, or what makes it good, or what makes it evil?
The consciousness is not good and not evil, it's just consciousness. And manifestation of consciousness allows for freedom, and then all possibilities can emerge. And as we grow in consciousness as individuals and society, we have a responsibility and we have a choice. We can make the wrong choices, we can have large stress as individuals, and then the collective consciousness, it doesn't mean is good. It doesn't mean it represents the original field of consciousness. It represents maybe a wrong dynamic of that consciousness, a mixed up, stressed, tense consciousness. And so the collective consciousness can be very negative and then can lead to destruction. And at the end of the day, it destroys itself.
So I guess what I'm hearing is it's wrong for me to put the good or evil construct around consciousness. Consciousness just is.
Exactly.
And then when it comes down to the human element and whatever our neurotransmitters and nerve cells do with it is how it gets impacted into being good or evil and how you develop a social consciousness.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm educable. What a deal.
You're wonderful. You're educating many people.
And if the public could only see your face, and as I've been watching it during this time, clearly Transcendental Meditation provides an inner sense of peace, which is emitted from your facial expressions during the full time that I've been talking with you.
Well, I'm very, very flattered.
Well, this has been a real pleasure. Dr. Nader, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I think that Transcendental Meditation is an important component in life. It's something that everybody should do. There are physiologic benefits, but I think also psychological and consciousness benefits. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
This is Your Brain with Dr. Phil Steig was produced for the Weill Cornell Medicine Department of Neurosurgery by the Really Interesting Picture Company. The episode producer was Geraldine Abinader. Social media management by Jillian Jean Creative. The series is directed and edited by Tom Veltri, with music by Lenny Williams. The announcer is Mindy Weisberger. Interstitial by Allison Power. For more information, visit our website at thisisyourbrain.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to follow Dr. Steig on Facebook at This Is Your Brain.